On the main road, a mother put her child in the car seat, but then the child, who had been crying loudly just now, suddenly stopped. The mother turned around and saw that the child had disappeared. The father, who was pushing the cart, also disappeared on the spot. Only the son was left running everywhere, calling for his father. Cars that were running normally suddenly lost control and caused terrible accidents. The reason was because there was no driver in the car. In just a few seconds, the 911 hotline was burned out. All the incidents were identical. Everyone was screaming for help. According to statistics, in that moment, a total of 140 million people in the world mysteriously disappeared. These people never returned. No one knew where they went, nor why they disappeared. 3 years had passed and there was still no news of the missing people. It was as if they had disappeared from the world, as if they had never existed. But there are always people who cannot accept this result. Every October 14th, the government will hold a memorial service. People hold up banners and take to the streets. They write all their sorrows on boards to release their emotions and pain of loss. They call the missing people heroes, and some even erect statues to commemorate them. People gather together and read out loud the list of missing people. Those below the stage grieve when they hear their loved ones' names mentioned again. This is a memorial service, but it is more like a punishment, because this is a gathering that is held every year. It is no different than making the loved ones who are still alive experience the pain of losing their loved ones again. The scar is turned over and over again. On this day, there is another group of people who do the complete opposite. They wear white clothes, they have mouths, but they never speak. They communicated by writing on cardboard, regardless of gender. They smoked all day long. 3 packs a day was not enough for them. Since the disappearances had mysteriously disappeared, some people thought that this was a punishment and they had to atone for their sins. So they spontaneously formed the Organization of Sinful Remnants, abbreviated as OSR. They abandoned their families and children, including their spouses, and then gathered together. No one spoke or communicated with anyone outside the organization. Every day they wore white clothes, symbolizing purity. They would monitor the families of the missing. They were everywhere and infiltrated every corner. Even if they were chased and beaten, they would not waver. Wherever there were people, there would be atonement workers quietly watching. Some laughed it off. Some were stared at until they collapsed. Some got angry. They really didn't understand why these people kept following them. They didn't know what those people wanted from them. Those people were like undying ghosts, disturbing their lives. All day long, they were being watched by 2 people dressed in white. But the person who didn't say anything and just stared at them was unbearable. Being beaten and scolded was still considered mild. But things didn't stop there. On October 14th, the town held a memorial service for the missing as usual. At the same time, the atonement workers also came. They lined up and rushed to the scene. These people held placards in their hands as if protesting. The placards read, "Don't waste your breath." The memorial service had to stop. Some people were already annoyed by these atonement workers. On such an important day, they came to cause trouble, which was really disrespectful and troublesome. The scene was chaotic and out of control. Immediately fell into chaos. The people in white were beaten but did not fight back. They were scolded but did not scold back. They just cowered on the ground and endured the violence of the crowd. When the police saw this, they quickly ran over to stop it. But the anger of the people was hard to calm down. Even though the atonementists were bleeding, there were still people who refused to stop. As the police chief, Kevin could only fight back to protect the atonementists. But this was not a special case. That night, the news reported that in many places around the world, there had been extremely brutal conflicts. Some places even had shootings. Compared to those places, Kevin's area of responsibility was still considered peaceful. Kevin frowned and thought as he watched the scene of the raging fire on the news, because recently he had encountered something extremely unreasonable. One day, he met a dog while Kevin was calling it over. A sudden gunshot made him fall backwards in shock. A big guy, 1.8 meters tall, calmly put away his gun and walked away. The dog had a tag on it. It was the owner. Kevin went to the address on the tag and informed the owner that her dog had been shot dead. The woman opened the door with a wary look. She said that she did have a dog, but it had disappeared 3 years ago. It used to be her husband's dog, but her husband had not returned either. A trace of helplessness flashed in her eyes. She still found it difficult to understand why the pace population had suddenly disappeared 3 years ago. That accident had left many people in the dark, unable to escape, Kevin himself included. Kevin's family of 4 was originally very harmonious and happy, but after the accident, Kevin's wife, Lori, left him to join the Redemption organization. Since then, she had not responded to his words. She didn't say anything more. Their son and daughter also went on the path of rebellion. The daughter loved parties and stayed out all night. The son stayed stayed in a different place every day and refused to be obedient. Kevin looked at the sweet photo they had taken together in the past and couldn't control his anger and punched it. Under the high pressure, Kevin suffered from insomnia and nightmares. He had to rely on sleeping pills to fall asleep. When Kevin woke up, he found the house in chaos. The door that was already locked was also violently slammed. It seemed like something had broken into his house. Kevin was bewildered and didn't understand anything. All the pressure seemed to be waiting for an outlet to come out, and not long after that, this outlet appeared. After the memorial service for the missing in town ended, Kevin ran to the bar to relax and drink. At this moment, a familiar figure passed by. Kevin immediately recognized that the man was Dean, the one who had abused and killed the little dog. Kevin chased after Dean and followed his car, cursing him non-stop. But Dean seemed to not hear anything. Dean stepped on the gas pedal and disappeared in a cloud of dust. Kevin firmly said that Dean's actions were crazy. Dean shouldn't have done that to a dog. Kevin thought that Dean couldn't kill it without reason. At this moment, Dean had disappeared. A redeemer standing next to him looked at Kevin like he was a madman. A sensitive nerve in Kevin's heart was touched. Kevin drove straight into the redemption base. Kevin asked to see his wife, Lori, but Lori was only a meter away from Kevin. She didn't move. He seemed to be on the verge of collapse. He begged her to come home with him. Then Kevin was knocked down by a man. In the end, Kevin was beaten to no avail, but he still couldn't call his wife home. The hearts of redeemers are harder than people think. Kevin returned home empty-handed. On the way home, he met a deer. Curious about it, he got out of the car and started talking to the deer. He asked if it had come to his house yesterday. The deer, of course, couldn't answer. It just stared at him. The next second, a dog barked from afar, and then a pack of wild dogs ran over. The deer was startled and ran away, but in the end, it couldn't escape the pack of wild dogs. The pack of wild dogs rushed up and tore the deer apart. Kevin was stunned by the scene before him. He stood still for a long time without moving. At this time, Dean, who specialized in hunting wild dogs, ran over and told Kevin that these dogs were not normal. They were not their dogs. Kevin was still confused and didn't understand. Then Dean said again that those dogs no longer belonged to them. Then Dean asked Kevin if he had a gun. Kevin nodded unconsciously. Under Dean's guidance, the pent-up emotions in Kevin's heart finally had a place to release. Kevin raised his gun and aimed at the pack of stray dogs. Painful memories flashed through Kevin's mind. On October 14th, 2% of the world's population disappeared without a trace. The loved ones were in great pain. They weren't sick or ill. They weren't murdered, but they just left without saying goodbye. That feeling really made people feel extremely miserable. Even their loved ones could only live each day in endless weariness. If it was death, then perhaps the loved ones' emotions would have a place to vent, but the disappearance only increased the feeling of helplessness. They had no place to mourn and no place to vent. But the Redemption Alliance thought this was a punishment from God, so they left their original families and gathered together. They dressed in rags to beg for forgiveness. Thin crackers with cream sandwiched between them could fill their stomachs. These people only do one thing every day, which is to monitor the families of the missing. These people always remind them to atone. This is strange enough, but there are things that are even more unbelievable. To join the Atonement Alliance, you have to use an axe the size of your palm to cut down an ancient tree. This is not something that humans can do. Meg was furious about this entrance exam. She did not understand why the test had to be taken in such cold and uncomfortable weather. Meg's anger was like hitting a cotton ball. She was both angry and helpless, but setting such an inhumane test was not unreasonable, because the Atonement people were the most hated people in town. They were either scolded or beaten. People with weak hearts would definitely not be able to bear it. Therefore, if one wanted to become an Atonement person, one had to have a strong heart and endurance. They had to accept contempt and violence. These were all everyday things. It was obvious that Meg was still unqualified. After Meg calmed down, she still didn't want to give up. 3 years ago, her mother suddenly disappeared. Since then, she lived in longing every day. It seemed that only joining that organization could ease Meg's pain. After Kevin learned about Meg's situation, he tried to advise her to stop living a normal life. But Meg was determined to stay in the organization. She completely ignored his advice. So Kevin had to go find Meg's fiancé. He tried to get him to talk to her, but the man was completely disappointed in Meg. In order to join the redemption group, Meg voluntarily postponed her wedding date by 3 years. She didn't even say a word and pretended to be missing. The man thought that Meg didn't need him. He said that what she needed was those demons. They couldn't do anything. In fact, Kevin could completely understand this man's mood. Kevin was no different. He was also suppressed. After the man left, Kevin received a phone call. His subordinates informed Kevin that they had found Dean's car. Kevin immediately drove there. Unexpectedly, he drove straight to his house. Dean's special car for killing dogs was parked right in front of the garage. The car was unregistered and not wanted. Kevin could not find find out Dean's real identity through the car information. Kevin suspected that everything yesterday was just a dream, but he discovered a dead dog in the trunk that had not been thrown away. His subordinates looked at Kevin with suspicion. Kevin was confused and explained that the car was not his. He did not kill the dog either. But that night, Dean suddenly took the initiative to come to the door and invited Kevin to go hunting stray dogs with him. This time, Kevin hesitated. At this time, Kevin still did not know Dean's name or other identity. After Kevin wanted to ask, Dean asked him back. Dean asked Kevin in what capacity he was asking him, as a friend or a police officer. Kevin said they had never been friends. For this reason, Dean did not want to answer Kevin anymore. Faced with Kevin's questioning look, Dean did not continue to argue. Dean told Kevin the time and place and then left arrogantly. Kevin was full of doubts. Too many strange things had happened recently, so he decided to go find his father to talk to. His father lived in a nursing home. His father suffered from severe schizophrenia. When talking to him, his father sometimes talked with a second personality. This made Kevin, who was already upset, even more depressed. But Kevin's father felt that he was very normal. Moreover, he also told Kevin the reason why he came to find him. Kevin's father said that Kevin came here because he started to lose his memory. Kevin kept not remembering what he had done. Kevin's father knew that recently, Kevin had been running around shooting and killing stray dogs in the middle of the night. Kevin's face was full of surprise. It was obvious that the person who hunted the stray dogs was Dean. Kevin's father did not refute him. His father only told him that no matter who it was, he must keep this matter a secret. But who was the dog killer? Where did Dean come from? All these questions became Kevin's heartache. In another development, the priest converted the $20,000 he had just dug into chips. The first time he went to the betting table, he bet all the money. The dealer asked him if he was sure. He said without hesitation that he would only play at this table. The amazing thing was that as a newbie, he bet right away. $20,000 turned into $40,000. He had no intention of stopping. He used $40,000 to continue playing. He continued to bet on red. When the small ball rolled, he smiled. The $40,000 doubled again. His luck exploded. Even the passers-by were amazed and couldn't believe it. He confidently increased the bet. He wanted to play another round. He should have known when to stop, but he didn't listen. He bet all his chips because he needed money, and a lot of money. $80,000 in red. When the wheel spun, everyone held their breath. The moment the little ball stopped spinning, he was stunned for a second. He looked around in disbelief. $80,000 doubled. $160,000 was in the priest's hands. He could finally straighten his back. But sadly, as a priest, Matt had suffered all kinds of humiliation. After the disappearance 3 years ago, Matt founded the Salvation Army, but his purpose was completely opposite to the government. The government considered all the missing people as heroes, regardless of whether they were a good person who did good deeds all their life before they disappeared, or a bad person full of crimes. Once they disappear, all their sins will disappear into thin air. But Matt didn't think so. He believed that bad guys are still bad guys. Even if they disappear, the crimes they leave behind are hard to erase. So Matt began to expose the evil deeds of some missing people, and he printed leaflets to distribute widely. This behavior was quickly retaliated by the families of these people. So Matt was beaten many times. His face was often bruised. What's worse, the income of the association was so small that Matt couldn't make enough to cover expenses. Although he did everything himself, the association still had difficulty maintaining itself. Even the church loan could not be paid. Finally, one day the bank informed Matt that the church had been auctioned. They asked him to pay all the debts within 3 days, or the church would most likely be demolished. But Matt didn't have the money to pay, so he went to find his sister. But his sister asked him not to print leaflets anymore. He should not do things that would cause him to be beaten again. Matt firmly refused because it was his belief. He felt that he was chosen by God to expose the evils in the world. Finally, the two had another fierce argument. At this time, Matt felt a lot of pressure. His job was not going well, and life was getting harder. His wife was seriously ill and could not take care of herself. He could not even afford to hire a caregiver for his wife. Late at night, Matt lay next to his wife and thought about what he had experienced. Sadness suddenly arose in his heart. He covered his face and sobbed. He suppressed his broken heart and gently prayed to God. Suddenly, Matt seemed to have received some enlightenment. Matt quickly got up and drove to Kevin's backyard. But here, Matt met Lori. Matt was a little confused. He immediately explained that Kevin's father left him something here. Lori did not stop him, but let Matt dig up a small jar in the backyard. There was a sum of money in the jar. Matt used the money to change his life successfully. But just as Matt was about to leave with the money, he was stopped by a thug. The thug saw the money, so he robbed all of Matt's money. He also beat Matt up. Looking at the thug's arrogant back, Matt's expression changed slightly. Finally, it seemed that he had received some information again. He didn't care if it was right or wrong. He immediately stood up and rushed to knock the thug down. Matt repeatedly beat the thug. The thug was beaten to the point that he had no strength to resist. Matt took back the money bag and drove away. On the way home, Matt was extremely happy. This time, he could not only keep the church, but also pay for his wife's care. But on the way, an incident happened. The two people who had redeemed themselves were injured by stones thrown by passersby. Matt quickly stopped the car to check the situation. He conveniently called the police. Unexpectedly, the two bad guys who threw stones came back. The two men threw rocks, injuring Matt. When Matt woke up, there was no time left. He had missed the deadline to pay. Although Matt was holding a large sum of money, the bank had already auctioned off the church. Matt rushed to the church, but the place had been cleared out. The person who bought the church was the Atonement Society. Seeing the sign of the Atonement Society being torn down, Matt felt like his heart was being stabbed. He had heard of the Atonement Society's actions. Others stole gold and silver, but they stole memories. On Christmas Eve, this group of people broke into people's houses and quietly took away the photos in the houses. They only left the photo frames. This was an act that deserved to be beaten. After the action was over, the Atonement Society gathered in the car and returned. Lori said she wanted to take a walk. After everyone left, she went straight to the sewer on the side of the road and put her hand into the narrow manhole cover. There was a lighter in the sewer. It was a Christmas present from her daughter. The day before, Lori unexpectedly returned home. Kevin was overjoyed to see his wife return home. He thought she had changed her mind. He even specially brought out her favorite breakfast. Unexpectedly, she did not come back to reconcile, but to divorce. Lori still refused to talk. She specially invited Meg to speak for her. Lori wrote a letter of apology for Meg to read to Kevin. Although the letter was full of remorse and guilt, Lori still did not change her mind about divorce. Lori was determined to leave Kevin and leave this family. Kevin angrily snatched the divorce papers and firmly told Lori that he did not agree because he was her husband. They were married and had made vows. If she wanted to end it, then she should say it herself. She should say it herself. Lori just looked at Kevin sadly. She still could not say a word. She was about to forget that she had not said a word for the past 8 months. Kevin just stood there screaming. He hoped that she would open her mouth to say something. Just as Kevin lost control of his emotions, his daughter opened the door and walked in, looking at him going crazy, and the mother didn't say a word. She didn't say anything and went straight to the Christmas tree. She gave Lori the gift she had prepared in advance. On the way back, Lori opened the gift. It was an exquisite windproof lighter. On it was engraved a small line, "Don't forget me." Because the Redemption organization didn't allow members to keep personal belongings, Lori awkwardly looked at Meg. Meg thought Lori wanted to keep the lighter, so she tactfully said that she wouldn't tell anyone. But Lori didn't hesitate to throw the gift down the drain. Lori regretted it now, but the gift was right in front of her, but she couldn't get it. At this time, the organization was in danger. The Redemption people were too arrogant. They kept monitoring and illegally breaking into people's homes. Finally, someone couldn't bear it anymore and kidnapped the leader of the Redemption group. It was a woman named Gladys. They tied her up in the woods. Then they kept throwing rocks at her to vent their anger. 1 rock, 2 rocks, 3 rocks. The rocks got bigger and bigger, and the frequency of throwing them increased. Gladys was stoned until her head bled. She was extremely scared and slowly opened her mouth to beg for forgiveness. Unfortunately, her resentment was nothing compared to Gladys's apology. In the end, Gladys still died. Very soon, the Atonement group discovered that Gladys was missing. They immediately gathered everyone to go out and search. Finally, they found a bloody body in the woods. Lori was scared. She fell to the ground right there. The next day, a new leader of the Atonement group appeared. It was a woman named Patty. Patty hurriedly went to Kevin and hoped that he could help them find the culprit. After examining the scene, they found no clues. Those people acted very discreetly. The killer deliberately chose a forest without surveillance cameras to commit the crime, making the investigation very difficult. Kevin advised Patty not to show herself recently. She just obediently stayed in one place. Normally, the stubborn atonementists would definitely object, but this time, Patty obediently wrote 2 words on a piece of paper that she would do as Kevin said. It seemed that they were really scared. This was the first time Kevin had taken on such a difficult case. There was not a single clue about the killer's identity. After a while of investigation, Kevin finally remembered one person, Father Matt. The church that Matt valued the most had been bought by the Atonement group as a base. Kevin suspected that Matt was trying to take revenge. Matt denied this and said that he was at home the night of the crime and there were witnesses. Although Matt hated the Atonement group because they took away his territory, he had not gone to the extent of killing anyone. Just like Matt himself said, killing them was meaningless. What he wanted to do was to make the Redeemers leave the organization so they could return to normal life. Kevin looked at Matt Matt, half believingly. Kevin had a completely different view of religious sex. It was easier said than done, but Matt could do what he said. That night, Matt went to the door of the redemption group's base and prayed loudly for Gladys. Matt then advised the people in the house to give up their obsessions and return to the arms of their families. Lori's expression in the house changed slightly. She was the first to rush out the door. Matt thought Lori had made the right choice. Unexpectedly, Lori reacted strongly. She just blew the trumpet and looked at him with a sorrowful look. In another development, a woman named Nora was also in trouble. One night, she called a home service. The girl came in and took off her cumbersome coat. She tried to show off her charm. For her, home service was a job. Men and women were the same. She was still wondering why Nora was lingering there. Nora unexpectedly said that she wanted the other person to shoot her. Then Nora pulled out a gun from her pocket. When the girl saw that Nora was serious, she quickly refused. She had been doing the service for many years, but this was the first time she had killed someone. She said that she only slept with people and did not want to break the law. Seeing that, Nora immediately took out a wad of money. If the girl fired one shot, she would get $2,000. Moreover, Nora would wear a bulletproof vest. This was just a test, not a real murder. Under the temptation of money, the girl immediately nodded in agreement. Nora put on a bulletproof vest and turned on loud music to cover up the sound of the gunshot. Nora told the girl to aim at her heart. Then Nora counted down 3 times. After a while of struggling, the girl finally pulled the trigger. Nora fell to the ground following the gunshot. The girl was scared and panicked and left. After a while, Nora exhaled and woke up. This was not the first time she had played this killing game. She represents the families of the missing in town. 3 years ago, Nora's husband and child disappeared. The family of 4 was left with only Nora. The probability of 1 in 128,000 fell on her head. This was even more difficult than winning the lottery. Since her husband and daughter disappeared, Nora's life became meaningless. Nora could only seek pleasure and excitement. She always wanted to die, but she still held a glimmer of hope that one day her husband and child would return. Nora always had a gun in her pocket. She waited for the day when she could no longer bear it and would die. In order to better investigate the missing cases, the government specially established a security group. Nora was a member of this group. Not long after, the group held a conference. Nora accidentally lost her membership card. When she rushed to the conference hall, she discovered that someone was pretending to be her. Moreover, this woman's purpose was not simple. She revealed some little-known secrets on the spot. She said that an investigation team was formed just to silence the people. She also said that according to the Israeli intelligence agency, in 2005, the agency tested a type of plasma beam. It could target any matter and turn everything into dust. The woman had not finished speaking when she was pulled down by the staff. Nora, who was below the stage, was also stunned. She did not know if the investigation team was really investigating or just trying to fool the public. Where did the disappeared people go? It was all a mystery. Nora's mind became confused. She was about to go home when she met a strange old man on the way. The old man said that he could answer her questions, so he took her to a small, narrow room. Before they could answer her questions, Nora had to pay a fee of $1,000. This was clearly a scam, but Nora did not think much of it. She transferred the money immediately. Then Nora met a tall man. Nora later learned that the other person's name was Wayne. He was also known as Saint Wayne. Nora looked at Wayne warily. It was obvious that she had never heard of this person, but Wayne didn't care. Since he had received Nora's money, he had an obligation to help her out of trouble. Wayne told Nora about her situation. She had lost her loved ones. She was in pain all day. She wanted to die but didn't dare. Wayne told Nora that as long as people were alive, there was hope. Nora had no doubt a living dog was better than a dead lion. Hope and attachment were her weaknesses. She wanted hope to disappear because she thought she didn't deserve it. But Wayne told Nora that she did. After Nora talked to Wayne, she was truly free from sadness. She was ready to start a new life. She went to court to file for divorce. Even though her husband had disappeared, the procedures still had to be done. Here Nora met Kevin again. Kevin is also considered an old acquaintance of Nora. He thought she came to pay a traffic fine, but he heard her say it was a divorce petition. Coincidentally, Kevin is also coming here with the same purpose as Nora. There are ironic things. Perhaps they can only find a new beginning by letting go of the past. In another development, confusing stories are taking place. The current scene is in the forest. This is a game of brave people. They lock themselves in a sealed refrigerator. Whoever can last longer will be the winner. To break the record, she lasted for half an hour. After the countdown ended, Jill became the final winner, but an accident happened. The refrigerator handle broke, so Jill was stuck inside. The dark and oxygen-deprived environment made her panic. She kept asking what happened. She wanted everyone to let her out quickly, but the more she struggled, the faster the oxygen was consumed. Very quickly, she lost consciousness. promise. Just when she thought she was going to die here, the refrigerator door suddenly opened. A white-haired old man saved her. This man was Jill's grandfather. He came and left. He specifically told Jill not to tell her father that she had met him. At night, Kevin discovered that his daughter was in a bad mood. After asking carefully, he learned that his father had escaped from the mental hospital 3 years ago. After the population disappeared, Kevin's father, who was a police chief, suddenly burned down the library. He almost caused a big problem. After that, he voluntarily went to the hospital, but recently, he kept wanting to escape. Kevin was worried that his father's condition would worsen and he would do something unbelievable. So Kevin mobilized his subordinates to search for his father's whereabouts throughout the city. But Kevin searched all night and still could not find any trace of his father. Kevin returned home exhausted. He was just about to rest when he suddenly heard a dog barking outside the door. Kevin opened the door to see that it was Dean. Then Dean coaxed Kevin to go out and catch the dog. At Dean's urging, Kevin once again raised his gun at the dog. But in the end, Kevin still couldn't pull the trigger. This time, he wanted to keep the dog to try to tame it. Unfortunately, the stray dog still retained its wild nature. It only knew how to bark loudly all day long. Kevin could only endure it. He didn't know that one day, when he couldn't stand it anymore, he would shoot it to death. The next day, Kevin received news that his subordinates had found his father's whereabouts. But a 1.8-meter tall man was beaten by a skinny, crazy old man. When Kevin arrived, his father was gone. Things were getting more and more difficult. Kevin returned home with a worried face. Kevin found that his father had taken the initiative to come to the door. Kevin didn't say anything, but he handcuffed his father. He prepared to take his father to the hospital. On the way, Kevin's father took advantage of the moment the car stopped, opened the car door, and once again escaped. This time, Kevin did not spend much effort looking for his father, but immediately went to find Father Matt. In this world, the person Kevin's father trusted the most was Matt. Not long after, Kevin's father appeared. This time, he did not continue running, but told Kevin that he was not crazy. He had just realized and accepted himself. Kevin's father advised him to quickly wake up and stop lying to himself and pretending to sleep. Kevin was bewildered and did not understand what his father was saying, but Kevin's father suddenly became angry. He said he wanted to free Kevin. He wanted Kevin to be free from his suffering. Even if Kevin could not wake up, it was fine. The more he screamed, the more agitated he became. In the end, he ended up with violence. Kevin was forced to take his father to the hospital. After a series of pent-up events, Kevin's emotions needed to be released urgently. So Kevin knocked on Nora's door. Two lonely people finally came together. But for Jill, this was not good news. Her mother left home. Her father found a new wife. Her brother's whereabouts were unknown after leaving home. This family had nothing left to be missed. She released the stray dog that her father had locked up to give it back its freedom. Then she knocked on the door of the redemption organization with the intention of joining this place. She wanted to use this method to force her mother to talk. Unfortunately, Lori still persisted in her beliefs. Even when facing her daughter, she still could not change her mind. But Lori did not expect that because of her stubbornness, she almost killed her daughter. The story returned to that fateful day of October 14th. The children were holding hands and playing, but as soon as they turned around, the friend beside them had disappeared. Where they went is still an unsolved mystery. 3 years ago, 2% of the population suddenly disappeared. Some people blame the accident for their misfortunes in life, but were they really happy before the accident happened, when their loved ones were still there? 3 years ago, Kevin was just a lowly police officer. Lori was a talented psychologist. Jill was obedient. Tom was not the child who wandered around all day without coming home like he is now. Although the family was happy, Kevin felt a bit suffocated. Lori did not like the smell of cigarette smoke, so Kevin forced himself to quit smoking. But every day when Kevin jogged in the morning, he secretly smoked a cigarette to relax. Before Kevin went home, he had to rinse his mouth to get rid of the smell of cigarette smoke. He was afraid that his wife would find out the clues. Kevin's job was not going well either. His father was the police chief, but his father did not respect him. His father even ostracized him a bit. Kevin had unspeakable suffering. On the outside, he still had to show that his family was harmonious, but the loneliness in his heart gradually made Kevin become an outsider in the family. They had joy and happiness, but he had nothing. He started using work as an excuse to stay away from his wife. They often argued over trivial matters. At first, Kevin secretly smoked cigarettes. Lori kept a dog in the house. Eventually, it became a matter of principle. While Kevin was working, he met a beautiful and charming girl. From the first time they met, they could not control their attraction to each other. But at this time, Kevin did not know that Lori was pregnant. A little creature was about to be born. At the same time, Nora's life was also a mess. She used to be an office worker, but because of her children, she became a housewife. Nora had quit her job for many years, so now she wanted to return to into the office, but she encountered countless obstacles. Her work was not going well. She also had to worry about the food and living of her husband and 2 children. The children were screaming loudly, while her husband calmly sat on the side playing with his phone. The 2 children kept crying for food and complaining of hunger. Nora told her husband that he was not allowed to use the phone while sitting at the table, but he said that she wasn't the same. Nora said that she was waiting for the results of her work, so her husband said that he was also working on his work. Nora was tired of her husband's words. She continued to listen to the children, screaming for hunger. Nora tried to hold back her anger amid the children's screams and went to make for breakfast. Her husband was still playing with his phone. He had no intention of helping her. Time passed little by little, without anyone realizing that an accident was about to happen. Everyone was still living a normal life without any change. Tom and Jill were walking around the school. Kevin was with a beautiful girl he had just met. Lori went to the hospital alone for a pregnancy checkup. Nora could not balance her life and work. On October 14th, all the misfortunes ended here. A new misfortune opened. Lori was having an ultrasound when suddenly she heard a scream. She and the doctor unconsciously looked out the door. When they turned around, the little creature on the ultrasound machine had disappeared. Lori suddenly lost her child. In the mall, her friend was still playing with Tom and Jill when this person suddenly disappeared. At this time, Nora also felt strange. The children who had been arguing loudly just a second ago were now silent. She turned around to look, but the house had long since disappeared from her husband and child. The beautiful girl who was passionately in love with Kevin also disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only an empty bed remained. People often only realize the importance of someone after suddenly losing them. Lori suffered the shock of her child disappearing and her husband having an affair. Lori joined the redemption organization. Kevin refused to admit his mistakes. He blamed his wife and the redemption organization. Even while half awake and half drunk, he kidnapped the leader of the redemption organization, Patty. This action pushed him into a new danger. Patty picked up a piece of broken glass from the ground and stabbed her aorta without hesitation. Blood flowed out in an instant. Kevin didn't think of killing anyone, but he killed someone. Kidnapping Patty was a complete accident. It was a mistake Kevin made when he was drunk. The next day, Kevin woke up and realized how wrong he was, but Kevin didn't dare let Patty go. If Patty reported Kevin, his future would be ruined. Kevin had been a police officer for many years, but this was the first time he was scared. But Patty didn't panic. She told Kevin that behind the mass disappearance was actually a process of self-liberation. Where the people who left didn't go was not important. What was important was what the people who stayed did. Everyone should accept the truth, but some people stubbornly deny it. The redemption organization was a witness to all of this. Kevin stared blankly at Patty with a dissatisfied and complaining gaze. Kevin said he finally understood why the redemption society didn't talk. The reason was that they were really good at lying. Patty saw that Kevin didn't believe her, so she continued to ask him if he knew why Lori wanted to join the redemption society. Kevin confidently replied that it was because he had disappointed her. Patty sneered. Lori joined the redemption society not because of one thing or one person, but because in the redemption society she could find a reason to exist. Perhaps this was the belief in their hearts. In fact, the redemptionists weren't afraid of death. Patty wasn't afraid either. Patty just wanted to convince Kevin to agree with her point of view. She wanted him to accept the redemptionists. In the end, he was moved. He untied her. But because of her belief, Patty did something stupid to make her point of view clear. Kevin indirectly became the murderer. Kevin couldn't tell anyone, so he could only contact Father Matt to help him dispose of the body. The two buried Patty in the mountains. Then they drove back to town. On the way back, they stopped to rest. Kevin went to the bathroom and heard heavy breathing from the next room. Kevin opened the door to see that Wayne was seriously injured. Perhaps because Wayne had cheated too many people, he was being retaliated against. When he was at his peak, Wayne had a group of followers. Kevin's son was one of them. Eventually, Wayne was surrounded and arrested by the police. Wayne went on the run. In order to protect Wayne's pregnant girlfriend, Tom was also forced to run away. That led to the fact that he had a home but still could not return. Under Tom's protection, the girl gave birth smoothly, but on the run, she was completely disappointed in Wayne. She left the child with Tom and quietly left. Tom held the child and searched everywhere for the girl, but in the end, he still could not find her. Unfortunately, Wayne was about to die without seeing his child. Only then did he come to his senses. He confessed that he was a scammer. At this moment, the police suddenly rushed in and successfully arrested Wayne. It was just that Wayne was about to die. Kevin and Matt finally arrived in town at night. As soon as they entered the town, they discovered that something was wrong with the atmosphere. Not far away, two redeemers were tied to a street lamp. They were severely beaten, but still did not fight back. At this time, the streets were in chaos. The redeemers redeemers who had become rats ran across the street and were immediately chased and beaten. It turned out that early this morning, they had done something shocking. They went to buy a batch of mannequins. There were adults and children, even babies. They dressed these mannequins. Then, before dawn, they secretly placed them in each person's house to maintain their position when they disappeared. Nora had just woken up when she almost fainted from the sight before her eyes. The others must have suffered a terrible shock. This was exactly the result that the redeemers wanted. In the excitement, everyone's emotions began to collapse. They took revenge in a frenzy and beat the redeemers. They even burned down their houses. When Kevin arrived, the fire was out of control. Lori hoarsely told Kevin that their daughter was still inside. Kevin, despite the danger, rushed in to save Jill, who was unconscious in the huge fire. It was not until dawn the next day that this drama temporarily ended. The actions of the redeemers had completely stirred up the pain in everyone's hearts. Nora left Kevin a letter and prepared to leave town. For the past 3 years she had always tried to forget, but the truth told her that there were things that could not be forgotten. She had to learn to accept growing up in pain. She had to find a new goal in growing up. But then fate led them to adopt a child of color. The person in charge of the orphanage introduced another child. It was a white child who also needed to find an adoptive family. Even tried to persuade Nora and Kevin to change their minds, but both of them refused. Seeing how determined they were, the person in charge had to go through the adoption process for them. For Nora, this child was her savior. After the riots in town, Nora originally planned to leave, but when Nora sent a letter to Kevin, she accidentally discovered an abandoned child in front of the door. The soft and chubby child immediately captured Nora's heart. Because of this child, she decided to stay. At this time, Kevin brought Jill home. The child became the link between the three of them. Not only Nora, but also Jill cared about the child very much. They did not know that this child was Wayne's biological child. After Wayne's girlfriend abandoned the child, Tom secretly left the child in front of his house. Because of the appearance of a new life, Kevin and Nora's feelings also had a turning point. The two were honest with each other. Kevin admitted that he was sleepwalking and even did something that led to Patty's death. Nora hesitated for a second and revealed her secret. She had called prostitutes to her house more than once to shoot her. The two looked at each other and smiled, as if they understood each other's past. Nora said everything would be fine, but was she really okay? Kevin tried his best to start a new life, to say goodbye to the past. He resigned as sheriff, but the truth was cruel. Patty's death or the riots in town became nightmares that haunted Kevin endlessly. They appeared before Kevin's eyes from time to time, especially Patty. She was almost everywhere. Kevin couldn't stand it anymore, so he bought a shovel and went to where Patty's body was buried to dig it up. Kevin wanted to see if Patty was alive or dead, but on the way back, he was stopped by the police for speeding. They were just going to stop him for a speed check. Unexpectedly, Kevin confessed that there was a dead body in his car. He was immediately arrested by the police. When questioned, Kevin honestly confessed that Patty had done something stupid. He was not the murderer. When the police heard the reason, they did not investigate. They immediately removed the handcuffs and let Kevin go. In their hearts, those who redeemed themselves were all psychopaths who were anti-human and anti-society. As for why and how they died, the police did not particularly care. Just when Kevin was called away by the police, Nora also encountered a strange thing. The house she was planning to sell was offered for $2.5 million. After receiving the phone call, she was stunned. After all, her old house was only worth $600,000. The buyer was either a madman or a rich fool, but the other party seriously told Nora that this house had a rare prime location. But Nora knew the reason they wanted to buy it was because 3 people in her family had disappeared. Nora told them what the other party wanted. The buyer didn't hide it anymore. Although they didn't know where the missing people had gone, they knew the reason for their disappearance. They guessed that the disappearance of those people was related to the terrain here. At places where many disappearances were concentrated, a lot of data could be collected. For example, here Nora remembered that her husband and children were sitting at the dining table. She was cooking in the kitchen. If she had been with them at that time, she might have disappeared too. The buyer collected so much data because they felt that this series of disappearances was not random. Moreover, there would be a next time. At night, Kevin's family gathered together. Kevin was tormented by nightmares, so he made a suggestion asking Nora if she wanted them all to leave. A new feeling of excitement suddenly arose. In her heart, the future is always unknown. Who knows if the population will disappear again? Why don't they take this opportunity to go out and have a look? They went to another land to buy a house. They spent $3 million to buy a house. The door of the house was bare. There wasn't even a fence. Kevin was stunned by the complete mismatch between the image and reality. This was not a garden villa. This was clearly survival in the wilderness. It was clearly clearly a trap. He opened the door and was even more disappointed. The walls were peeling and the gas stove was broken. The water was murky, the circuit breaker blew as soon as the light was turned on. Kevin finally got mad. He was angry that he had spent so much money on this house and now he got such a worthless result. Kevin didn't understand why Nora insisted on buying it when they hadn't even seen the house. This was the first time Kevin had raised his voice at Nora. Because of this dilapidated house, Nora had spent all their travel expenses. The family of 4 left the old town and drove to the magical town. 3 years ago, after the mass disappearance of the population, the whole world was more or less affected. Only this town had more than 9,000 residents. Not a single person disappeared in that accident. Later, the town was called the magical town. Every year, countless people wanted to stay in the town for a long time. Kevin originally planned to stay here. Unexpectedly, the house they booked online burned down and could not be lived in. The other houses were also full. They wanted to wait for a vacant room, but they did not know when or how many months. At this time, Nora noticed an auction nearby, a house worth $500,000. Under everyone's bidding, the price quickly increased to $1 million. Nora was extremely excited. She kept competing with others. Kevin tried to dissuade Nora. He told her not to continue bidding because they had a better choice, but Nora insisted on choosing this place. Nora then asked Kevin and her daughter for their opinion again. Although Kevin was confused and puzzled, he still nodded in agreement. Jill completely followed their arrangement. With the family's consent, Nora did not hesitate any longer. She straightforwardly withdrew $3 million to buy back this dilapidated house. Even though she had spent all her money, she was still as happy as usual. At least staying here would not cause her to worry about the people around her disappearing. But Kevin was not satisfied with the current situation. He was even a little angry. Not only was Nora dissatisfied with the house, but there was also a neighbor named John next door. The first day Kevin's family moved in, John invited them to his birthday party. Kevin seemed to resist because they did not know each other. Kevin thought it would be inappropriate for them to gather together as soon as they met, but Nora assured Kevin that they would only stay for 15 minutes. Only then did Kevin reluctantly nod in agreement. At the party, the two families were in harmony, but John said something shocking. Suddenly at the dinner table, John said that he had been in prison. John's wife tried to cover it up and said that he was just joking, but due to his professional habits, Kevin seriously asked John how long he had been there. John replied that he had been in prison for 6 years and 19 days. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. The two women in the house were trying to stop their husbands from continuing to talk further, but John would not give up. He insisted on telling all his criminal records. John forced Kevin to continue interrogating him. John told Kevin to continue asking him. Kevin asked what crime John had committed. Kevin had been a police officer for many years until he resigned, but he had never seen anyone so proactive, so Kevin could not help but ask John what crime he had committed. John accidentally said the 4 words, unsuccessful murder. Luckily, John's daughter brought out a birthday cake. This action interrupted the awkward conversation between the two. But just as John made his wish and was about to blow out the candles, his daughter's eyes suddenly became lifeless. The birthday cake, which had been perfectly fine, was knocked to the ground. The mother quickly explained that her daughter had epilepsy. She would occasionally have seizures. The party ended in a not-so-happy atmosphere. After the party, Evie and her friends went swimming. She promised her parents that she would definitely be home by 11 o'clock at night. Evie had been sick just now, but now she was out at night. If nothing unexpected happened, something would definitely happen. Sure enough, at 1 o'clock in the morning, an earthquake startled everyone. John woke up with a start. He rushed into his daughter's room, but the bed was empty. Evie had disappeared without a trace. John called or texted Evie, but there was no response. The friends who went with Evie also did not return home. John worriedly ran to the lake to look for his daughter. When he arrived, was stunned. The large lake had long since dried up, leaving only the fish struggling helplessly at the bottom. He shouted his daughter's name loudly, but it was no use. John couldn't find Evie. Nora woke up and couldn't find Kevin, so she was extremely worried. During the earthquake, Nora held her child. Fortunately, the earthquake didn't last long, but within minutes, the house was shaken into a mess. The water pipes also broke, and water kept gushing out. Nora held her child and panicked. She called her husband countless times, but he didn't answer. At that moment, Nora saw John rushing out the door, so Nora asked John's wife what had happened. Only then did Nora know that Evie had gone missing. Even Evie's friends hadn't come home. The fact that so many people had gone missing at the same time made Nora lose her composure. She thought that the mass disappearance of the population 3 years ago was happening again. Last time, Nora lost her husband and child. This time, Nora lost Kevin. Nora returned home in a daze. She staggered and fell to the ground. After a while, she tried to stand up to confirm her guess. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, there was no internet in the house, so she couldn't find any news outside. While Nora was in a hurry to call 911, the door opened. Kevin, covered in mud, walked in. Nora was extremely happy and hugged Kevin. He continued to sleepwalk and woke up in the middle of the night. He found himself lying wet in a dry lake. There was a large rock tied to his leg. Kevin took the rock off and climbed onto the lake shore. A bright car light shone straight at Kevin. He thought he was saved. He went over to see that the music in the car was still on, but the driver had disappeared. At this moment, John came looking for his daughter. Kevin was worried that something bad had happened, so he immediately hid. But there was no trace of Evie or her friends by the lake. There was only an empty car left. After Kevin returned home, he told Nora the whole story. After a night of struggling, Kevin discovered that his phone had fallen on the lake shore. If Kevin's phone was discovered by the police or John, he might have to bear the responsibility of Evie's disappearance. Just as the two were discussing their plans, an opportunity knocked on their door. The police used Kevin's pickup truck to go into the mountains to search and rescue Evie. Kevin and Nora followed. The two circled around the lake shore all day, but could not find his phone. The search and rescue team disbanded late at night. Kevin continued to search diligently. Indeed, God does not disappoint those who try. Finally, he found the phone in a puddle. This time, Kevin could rest assured. When Kevin returned home, he met John. John invited Kevin into the car and said that he wanted to take him home. But John drove to the outskirts of town. Seeing John's agitation, Kevin felt something was wrong. Kevin guessed that John had discovered something and misunderstood him. Evie's disappearance was extremely strange. The girl disappeared from the world without leaving any clues. But the police found a muddy fingerprint on the car window. Kevin was very confused because that fingerprint was left by him at midnight last night. Kevin was about to explain when John stopped the car and handed him a baseball bat. It turned out that John thought his daughter had disappeared because of his enemy. The muddy fingerprint was deliberately left by the enemy to provoke John. Kevin tried to stop him but could not stop the angry John. John kept hitting the door of the house with the bat. Kevin called out to him many times, but he did not listen. When Kevin arrived, John was shot. The man in the house was obviously scared by John's actions, so he fired in self-defense. He agitatedly explained that he had never met Evie. Kevin took John home for treatment. On the way home, Kevin's emotions collapsed once again. Patty followed Kevin like a shadow. She seemed to have grasped his weakness. She always provoked the relationship between Kevin and Nora. Kevin's family was broken. Nora's family was too. Now the two of them were just relying on each other. Kevin walked faster and faster, trying to get away from the woman who kept talking behind him. But at this moment, Patty was Kevin. She could not escape him at all. Patty's every word was like a knife. Patty said that Kevin and Nora were just relying on each other after losing everything. There was no true love between them. As long as Kevin still had hope in life, he would not choose to question himself. Kevin was stunned and wondered why he did not know. Only under Patty's reminder did Kevin remember. When he crawled out of the mud, there was indeed a large rock tied to his feet. If he had not done something stupid, why would he be so cruel to himself? But Kevin had absolutely no memory of what he had done while sleepwalking. But Nora seemed to sense something. At night, Nora took out a pair of handcuffs and handcuffed her and Kevin together. Locking the person she loved beside her was the best way to protect him. At this time, Father Matt had another problem. His wife, who had been paralyzed for 3 years, was suddenly pregnant. The doctor couldn't believe it. Even the police were baffled. Matt was overjoyed. Only he knew that this was a miracle. In fact, Matt was a wonderful husband. He never neglected to take care of his wife. He turned on the music and helped his wife go to the bathroom. Then he carefully washed her clean. He applied hand lotion and kissed her gently. After finishing everything, took his wife out to sunbathe and shop. When he came home at night, he made liquid food and fed her through a feeding tube. He ate simple sandwiches. When he slept, he installed a surveillance camera so he could watch his wife's every move. Then he turned off the lights. Every day, Matt would say goodnight to his wife and say he loved her. 3 years passed, and Matt was extremely devoted to his paralyzed wife. He traveled thousands of miles to move to the miracle town. This place was called the place of God's forgiveness. 3 years ago, 2% of the world's population suddenly disappeared. Only the miracle town was unaffected. As a priest, Matt believed deeply in this. What was even more miraculous was that on the first night they moved to the town, his wife woke up. Although it was only for 3 short hours, it gave Matt hope. But recently, Matt was a little upset. Since that night, his wife showed no signs of waking up. So he took his wife to the hospital outside the town for a checkup. The test results surprised Matt. His wife was pregnant. He had a child. On the way home, Matt was as happy as a child. He kept talking to his unresponsive wife all the way. When he was about to enter the town, he saw a broken car. He had always helped people, so he got out of the car to help this man fix it. This man accidentally saw that Matt was wearing a special bracelet. This type of bracelet bracelet was equivalent to a special passport. Only people wearing bracelets could enter the magical town. Those who didn't have one could only camp on the outskirts of town. In order to enter the town, the man stole the bracelets from Matt and his wife. Matt's wrists were crushed. He was so hurt that he fainted. Good people are not rewarded. Not long after, Matt slowly woke up. He seemed to hear his wife calling him. Although it was just a temporary hallucination, he still tried to get up. His wife couldn't stay out for too long, so he had to take her home. But the man stole Matt's car battery. Matt could only use his injured hand to push his wife back. Unfortunately, the two of them had lost their bracelets, so they couldn't enter the town. Matt had to ask for a new bracelet, but the reissuance procedure was too complicated. The man in the suit standing behind him was so frustrated that he started to provoke him. He even made fun of Matt's paralyzed wife. Matt couldn't stand it anymore, so the two of them started to fight. Poor Matt had never done anything bad in his life, but now he was being pushed to the ground and trampled. Then Matt and his wife were both locked up. Luckily, Kevin arrived in time, but Kevin and Nora had been in town for less than half a year, so they couldn't bail Matt out. They could only ask John to come, but John was rude. After John learned that Matt's wife was pregnant, he became suspicious. John didn't believe that the town could heal itself. Matt's wife's accidental awakening was also baseless. The reason Matt's wife was pregnant was because he couldn't control himself, so he did something he shouldn't have done when she was unconscious. Matt argued that he knew that John's daughter's disappearance had devastated him, but before John's daughter went missing, he was like that. John was full of resentment towards this place. The two glared at each other. John angrily abandoned Matt. John refused to bail Matt out, so Matt could only push his wife back to the suburban campsite and think of another way. In the end, Matt spent $1,000 to prepare to cross the border through the sewer. But that night, it suddenly rained heavily. As soon as Matt pushed his wife inside, they were quickly swept away by the water. Just as Matt called out in vain because he had a home and could not return, Nora and Kevin appeared and hid the two in the trunk of the car. They secretly took Matt and his wife into town. On the way, they encountered a terrible car accident. The driver died on the spot. Matt got out of the car to see. The dead man was the man who had stolen Matt's bracelet. Matt took the bracelet back and put it on his wife. Matt's bracelet was on the man's son's hand. Seeing the shy child, Matt softened his heart. In the end, Matt did not take back the bracelet, but temporarily left his wife in Nora's care. Matt returned to the campsite in the suburbs. Here, Matt would receive new help. One day, Kevin went to a place and said he wanted to be cured, but the old man gave Kevin a glass of poison. He also told Kevin to drink it. Kevin would be cured. Seeing Kevin hesitate, the old man explained that this was just a fake death drug. After Kevin drank it, he would inject Kevin with adrenaline. Kevin would wake up very quickly, and there would be no danger to his life. In order to cure his illness, Kevin picked up the glass of poison and drank it all. But immediately after that, Kevin's whole body started to convulse and foam at the mouth. Kevin fell to the ground unconscious. The old man did not keep his promise to inject Kevin with the drug, but poured all the drug on the ground. Then he picked up a gun and did something stupid. The incident was a bit panicked. Since Kevin came to the magical town, the number of times Patty appeared had increased. Even in the morning, when Kevin opened his eyes, he saw Patty beside him. The situation was getting more and more serious. Kevin didn't want to hide it from Nora anymore, so he took the initiative to confess to her that he could see Patty. Nora couldn't accept it for a while, so she took her child and Matt's paralyzed wife and left the house. Nora left a simple letter saying that Matt's wife and their child were with her. Nora told Kevin not to worry and went to find them. Kevin seemed to have lost the will to live after losing Nora and their child. Kevin desperately wanted to get rid of Patty, but he couldn't find a way. Kevin begged Patty to leave him alone. Patty was gradually destroying Kevin's life, but Patty said that Kevin was destroying his own life. At this moment, John's son, Michael, noticed Kevin's feelings. Michael didn't say anything, but got into Kevin's car. Then Michael said that he had a way to help Kevin. Michael took Kevin to his grandfather's house. Michael's grandfather was a famous shaman in town. Every day, he muttered that he could help others relieve their suffering. But this is a magical town. Family and friends are always by their side, so why are they suffering? That's why he was always shunned and ridiculed. The first time he met Kevin, he held Kevin's hand. He told him to let him free Kevin, but the way he freed Kevin was extremely surprising. He told Kevin to die temporarily. Kevin's temper flared up because he felt he was being toyed with. Kevin drove away angrily. Kevin searched everywhere for Nora, but she kept avoiding him. Just as Kevin was running around, he received a phone call, but the person looking for Kevin was not Nora, but his ex-wife. After the riot in the town, Lori left the redemption organization. When Lori almost killed Jill, she came to her senses. Redemptionists cannot redeem their sins, they only create more sins. So Lori and her son tried to enlighten the redemptioners. The new sect they founded founded was dedicated to confronting the redemptioners. They lured sinners to help them return to normal life. But after a while, the sect's income was not enough to cover expenses. Tom relied on his speeches to raise funds for the sect. Gradually, a feeling of guilt arose in his heart. He thought that he was using the name of saving people to cheat money, so he had an argument with his mother. The two said cruel words to each other. He said that his mother made him pretend to help and visit everywhere, and he said that she did not need to feel guilty for abandoning her family. Lori was hit on the weak point, so she slapped Tom hard in the face. The two of them broke up like that. Tom also left the sect. The more Lori thought about it, the more she regretted it. Lori went to ask Kevin if he had seen Tom, but Kevin had not heard from Tom for more than a year. Moreover, Kevin was being tortured by Patty. Lori was a psychologist, so she immediately recognized Kevin's illness. Normally, we cannot tell a person with schizophrenia that he has schizophrenia, but Kevin is not Lori's patient, so she will tell him the truth. What Kevin saw was not real. Only then did Kevin belatedly realize that he had schizophrenia like his father. The disease broke out under pressure and agitation. Under Lori's comfort, Kevin gradually accepted the truth. Kevin temporarily took Lori home to reunite with Jill. Then Kevin drove to Michael's grandfather's house. Kevin wanted to personally remove the second personality and get rid of Patty. He had to pay the price for having a complete self. He drank poison and passed out. Not long after, he woke up in a bathtub full of water. Kevin wrapped a towel around himself and walked out of the bathroom, only to find himself in a hotel. The hotel was very ordinary. A small line on the wardrobe was very eye-catching. First understand yourself, then build your image. Kevin didn't think much, but he opened the wardrobe. Among the clothes, he chose the most ordinary black suit. After Kevin finished packing and was about to go out, he was blocked by a big man. The big man didn't say anything, but he tried to kill Kevin. Fortunately, Kevin fought back in time. Kevin was confused at this moment. He wondered where he was and who was coming. This completely confused Kevin. After Kevin left the room, he went to the hotel lobby. Here, Kevin saw Michael's grandfather again. Michael's grandfather signaled to Kevin that this was the world after death. Everyone who came here would have a chance to choose their identity. The black suit Kevin chose symbolized an international assassin. Therefore, Kevin would become the target of assassination by others. Kevin was just attacked by the big man. Michael's grandfather's expression suddenly became serious. Michael's grandfather told Kevin that if he wanted to leave here, he had to complete his goal first. Kevin's goal was to eliminate Patty. Kevin nodded in agreement. At the same time, Kevin was also very curious. Kevin asked Michael's grandfather, "If I died before I came here, then why did you come here?" Michael's grandfather said he came here to atone for his sins. According to Michael's grandfather, Kevin had successfully eliminated Patty. The moment Kevin drowned Patty, he felt an unprecedented sadness. It seemed like another self was forcibly separated. Then an earthquake shook the mountain. Kevin crawled out of the hole. Michael's grandfather did not lie to Kevin. The poison was actually a fake death drug. Through pretending to be dead, Kevin killed his second personality, Patty. Kevin was reborn again. After waking up, he remembered everything that happened while sleepwalking, including Evie's disappearance. That night, Kevin really hugged a rock and prepared to do something stupid. Before Kevin jumped into the lake, he saw Evie's group with his own eyes. The disappearance of the three young girls was just a self-directed play. Kevin was about to tell John about this, but as soon as he got home, John had the police waiting at the door. Through fingerprint comparison, John discovered that the muddy fingerprint left on Evie's car was Kevin's. John suspected that Evie's disappearance was Kevin's doing. Kevin patiently explained to John the events. Although it was a bit surreal, every word Kevin said was true, but John seemed to not believe Kevin's words and actions. Why did Kevin see John's daughter leave without him stopping her? Kevin's death and resurrection was a myth. Kevin wanted to continue explaining, but John raised his hand and fired a shot. At this moment, there was only a flame of anger in John's heart. John no longer listened to Kevin's stories. Kevin fell to the ground. He had just died and come back to life. Now he was seriously injured. John left. As soon as John got out of the door, he was stopped by the police. The police said that they had found Evie. John was stunned and completely forgot that Kevin was still lying on the ground. John ran after the police car to a crowded place. At this time, the group of people Evie had just disappeared from reappeared standing on the suspension bridge. This was the place that connected the town to the outside world. They were plotting a terrible plan. 3 years ago, after the mass disappearance of the population, Meg came to the town to seek liberation. Here Meg met Evie. The two of them met as if they knew each other and understood each other very well. Although no one was missing in Evie's house, she was not happy. They were blinded by the happiness and perfection of the town. In fact, Evie's family had long since fallen apart. John had been in prison and had a hot temper. Her mother had wanted to leave him more than once. The family seemed harmonious but had different thoughts. Meg's misfortune was caused by her herself. Meg's mother died on October 13th, that is, the day before the mass disappearances occurred. That day, the two of them had dinner in a restaurant. Faced with her mother's urging to get married, Meg was very impatient. After arguing with her mother, she deliberately escaped to the bathroom. But just a few minutes later, Meg's mother suddenly suffered a heart attack and could not be saved in time. Meg could never forgive her, so she joined the Atonement Organization to reduce her sins. Since the riots, the Atonement Organization has gradually disbanded, but Meg has not left yet. She wants to reform the organization with more violent and direct methods. She also wants to remember those who have passed away. This reminds those who remain that everyone is guilty and everyone needs to atone. And this time, Meg has targeted the magical town. The story goes back to the day Evie disappeared. It turns out that night, Evie lied that she had an appointment with her friends to go swimming. Evie had just gotten into the car with a cheerful expression. When her expression changed immediately, she turned off the loud music. The three of them were sullen and did not say a word. Even when they communicated with each other, they used writing. They had long been members of the redemption group. The three of them parked the car by the lake and left their backpacks and phones. They turned up the music in the car to create a scene of sudden disappearance. Then they left without looking back. In fact, it was all Meg's plan. In Meg's opinion, the silence of the redemption group was useless. Only violence could wake people up. So, Meg argued with her superiors. If they wanted Meg to give them a reminder about how to live, she would definitely say it. It was not enough for her to just stand outside their house, staring at them and waiting for them to scream. Why could she just stand there when she could clearly poke a cigarette into their eyes? That was what a reminder was. Meg's thoughts shocked her superiors. Meg's superiors repeatedly ordered her not to cause trouble on October 14th. But Meg had been waiting for this day for a whole year. Her plan had already begun. Before the Memorial Day, Meg organized people to go to the magical town. On the way, Meg met Tom, who had just had an argument with Lori. Tom also wanted to go to the magical town to find his father. Tom heard that Meg was doing something, so he volunteered to join. Whatever they told him to do was fine. Just like that, Tom successfully infiltrated the Atonement group. The two of them went to the base on the outskirts of town. A mysterious member told Meg that they had caught an intruder. The man was frightened and begged Meg to let him go. The member also advised Meg to temporarily detain the intruder. After the action was over, they would release him, but Meg only coldly ordered them to use stones. The so-called stoning was the punishment in the Atonement group. They used stones to throw people to death. Tom couldn't bear it. Tom wanted to beg, but Meg didn't pay any attention to him. She went straight into a warehouse. Because he was so curious, Tom sneaked into the warehouse at night to see what secrets were inside. He opened the sealed warehouse door and looked inside. Unexpectedly, there were three young girls. Tom asked who they were. Then the group of people only wrote a sentence to tell Tom that it had nothing to do with him. Not long after that, the anniversary day came. On this day, miracle happened. Matt's wife suddenly woke up. Nora was overjoyed and took Matt's wife out of town to tell Matt the good news. Matt's years of hard work were finally not in vain. Seeing his wife awake, he suddenly became nervous. It was too dangerous outside the town, so Matt told Nora to take his wife back to town immediately. Unexpectedly, the redemption group started to take action. They occupied the suspension bridge leading into town and prepared to blow up the only road. The person who directly carried it out was Evie. John's wife discovered her daughter's whereabouts. She ignored the police's efforts and rushed to the suspension bridge. She tried to wake her daughter up and go home with her, but Evie was like a demon. No matter how her mother begged, she would not budge. When the countdown began, the atonement workers changed back into their white clothes and rushed toward the suspension bridge. They were about to storm the town. Evie ignored her mother's efforts and joined the crowd as they moved forward. The people gathered outside the town saw such a great opportunity and immediately followed the atonement workers. They also rushed into the town. The crowd pushed Nora down. In order to protect her child, she could only let others trample her. Luckily, a hand pulled her up. Then this person took her to a safe place. Actually, there was no bomb in the car. This was just the panic that Meg created to enter the town. In order to attack the town and destroy the town's illusion of perfect happiness, Meg teamed up with Evie to create a fake disappearance. Then Meg suddenly appeared before everyone. Meg's plan was successful. When Kevin woke up, the town was devastated like the riot years ago. Fires were everywhere, and people were injured everywhere. The Redemption Society had taken over the town. People outside flooded into the town in the name of the anniversary to party debauchery. Kevin endured the severe pain to get through the crowd. Kevin rushed into John's wife's clinic to stop the bleeding and treat his wound. Just in time, he met John coming to find his wife. Only then did John realize his stupidity. John apologized to Kevin and then bandaged Kevin's wound. John then took Kevin home. Outside, the town was in a state of panic. Inside the house was dark. Kevin was not sure where his family was. Were they safe? But when Kevin pushed the door open and looked around, he saw that they were all there. None of them had disappeared. They were finally reunited. The time flew by. 3 years later, one day Kevin suddenly put a plastic bag over his head and then wrapped it tightly with tape. He wrapped it around his neck again and again until he was gasping for breath. This was not the first time he had experienced death. The closer he got to suffocation, the more excited he became, because in this town, he absolutely could not die. 3 years ago, Kevin brought his family to the magical town. After a riot, order was gradually restored to the town. The people who caused the riot were the Redemption Society. They also received appropriate punishment. The Redemption Society headquarters was surrounded. A shell fell. All the Redemption Society members were turned into ashes, including Meg and Evie. The official explanation was that the headquarters had a gas leak and exploded. There was no more troublemaking atonement group, so the magical town was peaceful again. Kevin once again took over as sheriff. Tom followed Kevin and became a policeman. Matt was the winner of life. He not only waited for his wife to wake up, but also welcomed a healthy and lovely child. Matt is now the town's pastor. He spreads his wife's story every day. He believes that everything is due to the magic of the town. Since Evie was blown up, John's family has also fallen apart. After divorcing his wife, he took over his father's job. He became a psychic. John and Lori came together with the same mindset. John solved everyone's worries in front of everyone. Lori schemed behind their backs. It seemed like everyone lived a peaceful and happy life, but in fact, they all had unknown pain, especially Nora. Nora and Kevin had originally adopted a child, but 3 years ago, the child's biological mother came to claim her child back. This made Nora sink into endless longing. She couldn't contain her feelings and secretly went to visit her child. But the child she had raised since diapers didn't recognize her anymore. It simply asked who she was. Nora's smile immediately disappeared. At that moment, her heart ached terribly. Whether it was her biological child or her adopted child, they all passed away one by one. Some children she never saw again. Some children, when she saw them again, didn't recognize her. As a mother, Nora almost collapsed. Kevin also felt collapsed with Nora. Because Kevin had met Dean again, Dean spoke strangely. Dean told Kevin that the stray dogs they had hunted before had now turned into humans. Some had even mixed in with high-level politics. Dean said they might have become managers and become congressmen or ministers. That's why this world will be destroyed in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now is October 14th, the anniversary of the mass disappearance. Kevin listened seriously to Dean's lie. In Kevin's heart, everything was Dean's nonsense. Even Dean himself was an illusion like Patty's case. It was a personality created by Kevin. When Dean saw that Kevin didn't believe him, he was sad and packed up and left. Kevin thought this could end, but he got into trouble. The next day, Kevin and Tom went on a mission and were suddenly shot. The shooter was Dean. Dean wanted to kill someone. Dean thought Kevin had betrayed him, so he wanted to kill Kevin. Dean scolded Kevin for being fickle. Fortunately, Tom came to Kevin's rescue in time. Kevin looked at the body in front of him and was stunned for a few seconds because Dean was a normal person. Now Kevin began to carry his tired body home from work. After Kevin returned home, he found that the atmosphere in the house was a bit heavy. The reason was because Matt's wife was leaving. Matt's wife said she was leaving forever. Kevin was a little in disbelief when he heard that. He didn't understand why she left. After 3 years of waking up, Mary had always lived under the control of her husband, Matt. He didn't even let her leave the magical town. He was afraid that once his wife left, the magic would disappear. She would become a vegetable that couldn't move like before. Mary couldn't stand it anymore, so she decided to take her child and leave forever. Before Mary left, she told Kevin that Matt had recently written a book about him. Matt compiled Kevin's stories of death and resurrection into the sect's teachings. Matt's purpose was to promote the magical town. Kevin was very angry when he heard that. Kevin went to Matt. Kevin thought that his death and resurrection was just a coincidence. Matt's rewriting of Kevin's story into a doctrine is fabricating the truth. Matt thinks he is just telling the truth. Kevin did stupid things 3 times. One time Kevin hugged a rock and jumped into the lake, but the lake water mysteriously dried up. One time Kevin drank poison, but he did not die, but came back to life. The last time Kevin was shot in the chest by John, but he still survived. So Matt thinks that in the magical town, Kevin has become an immortal existence. As long as Kevin is here, he cannot die. After hearing this, Kevin scolded Matt as a crazy person. Kevin could not bear it anymore. Kevin took the book from Matt's hand and was about to throw it into the fire to vent his anger. At this time, the words 13 days until the end of the world appeared in the sky. At this time, many things happened on Nora's side. Nora was also extremely miserable 3 years later. 6 years ago, the world's population disappeared en masse. Her biological child disappeared at the dinner table. 3 years ago, her adopted child was reclaimed by his biological mother. Nora was really depressed. Until one day she received a phone call. The other party said that he had received a commission. The commissioner asked her if she wanted to see her children again. Although Nora knew that the other party was lying, the small hope of luck in her heart still won over her reason. She went to the address the other party provided. As soon as Nora entered the door, the man snatched her phone and threw it into the toilet. The purpose was to prevent Nora from secretly recording, because what the man was about to say was top secret. That person told Nora that physicists had discovered a type of light. During that mass disappearance, they used this type of light to create a machine that could travel through time. This machine could bring people to the side of those who had disappeared. There were currently 19 people participating in this experiment. Nora was also the chosen. After all, the probability of 3 people disappearing from a family of 4 is extremely rare. Although Nora was very eager to see her son and daughter again, she also knew that this experiment was risky. If this turned out to be a deadly problem, wouldn't it be more of a loss than a gain? That night, Nora received another invitation. The other party told her to quickly go to Australia to participate in the experiment. Nora hesitated for a second and then agreed. At this time, Kevin was very upset about the so-called apocalypse. He didn't know if the reminder he saw was an illusion or the truth. In order to ease his emotions, Kevin decided to go to Australia with Nora. On the way, Nora told Kevin the purpose of this trip. They weren't there to participate in the experiment, but to personally expose the conspiracy of these scammers. Not long after, the two of them arrived at their destination. Nora went to the experimental facility alone. Kevin stayed at the hotel to watch TV. A boring live show caught Kevin's attention again. In the crowd of onlookers, Kevin spotted a familiar face. It was Evie. Evie stared at the screen. It seemed like she was transmitting some kind of signal. Kevin was extremely surprised. He immediately took a taxi to the live broadcast scene. In the endless stream of people passing by, Kevin continued to search. Finally, Kevin spotted Evie's back. 3 years ago, Evie died in an explosion on a ship near town, but now she was alive again. Kevin thought he had relapsed. Evie was a personality Kevin created. Kevin stopped Evie and asked her why she had appeared, but she was bewildered and explained that she was not Evie. Kevin had mistaken the person. Just as Kevin was pulling her and asking her endless questions, a passerby interrupted. That person thought Kevin was harassing her, so he came forward to stop her. But Kevin only asked the girl silly questions. He even asked her if she was real. Only then did Kevin realize that the Evie in front of him was an ordinary person. Kevin intended to hold Evie back to ask for clarification, but he was considered crazy by passersby. They beat Kevin up. Kevin then contacted Lori and said that he had met Evie and had taken a photo of her. After Lori saw the photo, she repeatedly told Kevin that this must be kept a secret. She advised him not to get close to Evie anymore. But Kevin did not listen to Lori's advice. Kevin followed Evie all the way to her workplace. Evie was forced to the end, so she had to admit her identity. She claimed to be Evie. She also claimed that she had reincarnated. She just begged him not to tell anyone that he had met her, not even her family. Evie begged Kevin to leave her alone. Kevin did not understand why Evie's parents and brother were there, but she had to fake her death to come to this strange place. Evie simply explained that there was no family here, and her words made Kevin even more surprised. For the past 3 years, Evie had been in contact with Lori. Kevin could not accept his fate, so he contacted Lori again. But Lori repeatedly emphasized that Kevin had mistaken the person. Kevin wanted to refute, but Lori used his schizophrenia as an excuse. It was all due to his illness. That girl was not Evie at all. Then Lori asked Kevin to take a closer look at the photo again. When Kevin looked at the photo again, the girl on the phone had indeed changed into a different face. Even Evie in front of him had turned into a stranger. After Nora participated in the experiment, she was declared a failure. After the evaluation, she was eliminated from the experimental project. The two physicists left her without looking back. Nora wanted to find some inside information, but unfortunately, there was no result. The two returned to the hotel disappointed. Under pressure and shock, they had an argument. Nora discovered that Kevin had to report everything to Lori since he went out. Even if Kevin had a secret, he would only share it with Lori. Kevin blamed Nora for only having children in her heart. She only thought about her children. Both of them were tired of constantly arguing like that. Each of them said cruel words that hurt the other. The two words "break up" were stuck in their throats. Neither of them said it out loud, but they understood each other's feelings. She took off all her clothes and entered the closed room. When the iron door closed, she was completely isolated from this world. She calmly walked towards the machine in front of her. Her mind was filled with images of her children from the past. Following the instructions, she curled up in the space-time capsule. When the beep sounded, water began to be pumped into the capsule. Soon she would be able to meet the children she had always missed. Yesterday, Nora and Kevin had a fierce argument. Because of suppressing too many bad emotions, Kevin said the most regretful words of his life. He asked her how long it would take for her to get over the loss of her child, but Nora angrily argued that she had not lost her child. Her child was not dead. They had simply left. So Kevin, in his anger, said that Nora should have gone with them. This made Nora even more determined to leave. If the previous one was to expose the scammer's plot, this time, whether it was real or fake, she had to try. As October 14th approached, Matt was a little worried. Matt thought that if Kevin left town, his life would be in danger, so Matt decided to go to Australia to bring Kevin back. Before Matt left, he met Lori and John again. Lori had received a phone call from Kevin not long ago. She knew that his delusions had relapsed, so she planned to go to Australia to treat him. Both of them were kind-hearted, but they argued as soon as they met. Matt thought that Kevin was chosen by God. He would naturally be able to see things that others could not see. Lori was adamant that Kevin was sick. Kevin suffered from severe paranoia. He even intended to do something stupid, but Matt did not care about Kevin's mental illness. Matt read some hateful Bible verse to Kevin. Then, after Kevin realized that his old illness had relapsed, Kevin was scared and ran to the other side of the world, probably to get away from Matt. Each of them had their own opinion, and neither would give in. They had to get on the plane together. Unexpectedly, after arriving in Australia, they only found Nora. After arguing with Nora, Kevin had disappeared. At this time, Nora only wanted to participate in the experiment again. Lori and Matt went with Nora to the experimental facility. Seeing Nora's weakness, Lori tried to convince her to give up the idea of participating in this project. But Nora was determined because in her heart, this world had nothing left to hold on to. Nora said her final goodbyes to Lori and gave her car to Lori. Lori regretfully turned and left. Matt stayed behind to prepare to see Nora off on her final journey. After Lori left, she went to look for Kevin's father, who was hiding in Australia. Lori knew that as long as Kevin did not leave Australia, he would definitely come to find his father. Sure enough, after nightfall, Kevin slowly rode over. These two people who used to love each other could finally sit down together calmly. Talking about the past, Lori told Kevin that 7 years before the mass extinction of the population, she was actually pregnant. Just as she was looking at the ultrasound screen, the child suddenly disappeared. Only then did Kevin understand the reason why Lori suddenly joined the atonement group that year. As time passed, when they mentioned this unborn child, they both lied to each other. They both said that they did not want this child. But how could a parent's heart not look forward to the birth of a child? They were just looking for an excuse to reconcile with themselves. This was also to make the other person stop being sad. This was the last thing that was still stuck between them. After Lori said everything, her heart was finally at peace. After all, she still had a son and a daughter, so life had to go on. October 14th came as planned. It was followed by a flood. Kevin's father had a premonition that this was an apocalyptic flood and everyone would die. The only person who could save everyone was Kevin. Kevin's father told him to go to the other world and find a person named Grace to learn a song. As long as Kevin learned this song, he could stop the apocalypse. Although Kevin felt it was absurd, he still followed his father's words. He put his head in the water to feel death. Not long after, he woke up in a sea. In this world, Kevin met Dean again. There were also Evie and Meg. It turned out that they had really left the world. Here, Kevin received a new mission to assassinate the president. The president wanted to launch an unsanctioned nuclear war, but Kevin did not expect that the president of this world was himself. Before Kevin completed the mission, he finally found Grace. But Grace told Kevin that there was absolutely no song that could stop the flood. Singing to stop the flood was a myth. Even Kevin himself did not believe it. It was impossible, so Kevin decided to immediately complete the assassination mission. He returned to reality, but when Kevin faced the president, he could not do anything. But things had come to this point, so the president and the assassin could only fight to the death. Only one person survived, because the key to launch the nuclear bomb was hidden in the assassin's abdomen. Both of them were bewildered. Finally, the assassin decided to sacrifice himself. No matter what, one of them had to escape from here. Kevin told the president to cut open his stomach to get the key and then start the command system. In a moment, countless artillery shells were fired. This world was completely reduced to ashes. Not long after, Kevin woke up in reality. He saw a bright scene before his eyes. The flood had long passed. Kevin sat beside his father. He finally received his father's recognition. His father looked very old now. His father's words were no longer harsh. Kevin's father said he thought Kevin was dead. The rain was pouring down so hard that he was so scared that he sat on the roof like this. There are always such regrets in life, and Kevin's regret was Nora. One day, many years later, Kevin suddenly knocked on Nora's door. Nora did not expect that she would see Kevin again in her life. She appeared a little nervous and resisted. Kevin calmly said that he was just going to Australia for a vacation. Kevin happened to find Nora nearby, so he came to say hello. Kevin seemed seemed to have forgotten everything that had happened between them. He even enthusiastically invited her to a dance. Nora originally intended to hide far away. She closed the window and pulled the curtains. Only when not a single fly could enter the house did she feel at ease. She soaked herself in the water. Finally, she thought it through. She decided to go to the party venue. During the dance, Kevin enthusiastically took the initiative to ask Nora to dance. After so many years of separation due to misunderstanding, their hands finally held each other again. Nora told Kevin that she had indeed successfully traveled through time and met her children that year. But 7 years had passed. Her children had grown up and her husband had remarried. The family was happy and fulfilled. Nora became an intruder, so she could not integrate with their children. It turned out that the mass disappearance was two-way. 2% of the world's population disappeared. The remaining 98% were missing people. They had also experienced the pain of losing loved ones. They had also grown up in hardship. In the end, they had found their own happiness. Nora felt that she should not continue to bother them, so she went to the doctor, who had also traveled through time. She sat on the pre-made time travel machine and returned to their world. From then on, Nora hid in Australia and prepared to live alone until old age. But Nora did not expect that Kevin had not given up looking for her. Since Nora disappeared, Kevin took her photo and traveled almost everywhere in Australia. He searched every town. Finally, he found the true love of his life. It was just that the two of them were old. Fortunately, everything was over. Having each other again after losing each other must be the most wonderful thing. Perhaps everyone will continue to search for happiness like Nora did. She traveled to the world of the 2% of missing people to search for happiness. In the end, she returned disappointed. It was not until she was old that she waited for her own happiness. So I hope that each of us can live for joy and cherish every moment with the people we love. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you again.